You think you're trading, you open the draw your zones, you wait for confirmation, you plan your entry, set your stop, click buy. You feel in control. But here's the truth no one told you. You're not in control. You're not trading. You're being traded. The market isn't a battlefield. It isn't a casino. It's a machine, a living, breathing, indifferent machine that doesn't care about your feelings, your goals, your strategy. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't even know you. You're not an opponent in this system. You're an ingredient, fuel, input, data, liquidity. Every order you place is consumed. Every stop loss you set becomes a signal. Every emotional reaction is a clue. You think you're making decisions, but the system, the real system, has already anticipated your move. While you're watching price action, it's watching you. This isn't paranoia. This isn't fear mongering. This is what happens when you realize the truth. The market doesn't punish weakness, it digests predictability. And right now, you're exactly what it craves: predictable. That perfect breakout setup, already bait. That RSI bounce off 40, already seen, already priced, already devoured. You are food in a kitchen that never closes. And the chefs, they are not other retail traders like you. They're market makers, high frequency algorithms, exchanges. Not traders, but architects. The ones who built the maze you're running in. And while you sprint, react, chase, they sit, observe, extract, silently, systematically, efficiently. But here's the good news. You're not doomed. You're not hopeless. You're just misinformed, unaware, playing someone else's game without knowing it. That changes now, because this isn't a motivational speech. This isn't a strategy lesson. This is a system deconstruction. You're about to see the machine from the inside, how it thinks, how it moves, where it eats, and how to stop being food and start becoming part of the structure. You'll learn why price is just surface noise, why stop losses are visible to the system, why your behavior isn't private, it's processed, and most importantly, how to break the pattern, to step outside the loop, to stop feeding the machine and start designing within it. Because there are those who survive here, even thrive, but they don't play like traders. They operate like structural cells in a living organism, invisible, indispensable, undigestible. They don't scream to be seen. They move like shadow. They act with precision. They don't fight the current. They become the current. And it all begins when they stop asking, how do I win? And start asking, how does the system win and how can I exist within it? So now I ask you, are you ready to stop playing blind, to stop chasing setups like prey running from a predator, to stop reacting and start orchestrating? You won't find easy answers here. No shiny indicators, no false promises, only the truth, as uncomfortable as it may be. Because transformation only begins where illusion ends. And now, the illusion has ended. Welcome to the other side. You wake up, coffee in one hand, chart in the other, prices consolidating under resistance. You recognize the pattern. Classic breakout setup, you whisper to yourself. You buy. 3 seconds later, the market slams downward. A reverse wick. Your stop gets hit. Then, as if mocking you, price rockets upward, without you. You sit there blinking, confused, angry. You think, was I wrong? No, you were processed. This is the moment you need to hear the hardest truth. Shh, you're not being punished, you're being digested. Bit by bit, like meat being tenderized by a machine that doesn't care about your dreams or your diligence. This isn't about fairness, it's not about randomness. It's about structure, because the market isn't emotional. It's engineered. Every time you hit buy, the system hears new input detected. Your stop loss, a signal. A flag waving in the dark saying, hey, there's blood here. The machine sees it all. Your hesitation, your excitement, your FOMO. Not because it's psychic, but because it's designed that way. It thrives on your patterns, feeds on your routines. It doesn't see you as a trader, it sees you as liquidity. And liquidity is not a statistic, it's blood. Blood the machine drinks to stay alive. Every move you make, every textbook strategy you've learned, it's already been absorbed. You're not a player in this game, you're a resource. Think about this. Over 90% of retail traders lose. Not occasionally, not sometimes. Systematically, across countries, time zones, strategies. Same outcome. Why? Because they all think the same way, act the same way, enter and exit the same way, and the system was built to extract them. This isn't a battlefield. This isn't a casino. It's digestion. Millions of traders, one machine, one purpose. Harvest liquidity and redistribute it upward. And every time you believe you're making an independent decision, you're actually participating in a behavioral pattern that's already mapped, modeled, and monetized. This is not about paranoia. It's about precision. You're not being hunted. You're being anticipated. Your chart, the machine built it. Your data feed, it's filtered. Your broker routes you through systems designed to maximize someone else's profit, not yours. While you're studying RSI, someone else is studying you. While you're waiting for candle confirmation, they're calculating the density of stop-loss clusters just beneath your feet. So you wonder, is it rigged? No, it's not rigged. It's engineered. It's not personal. It's structural. And that's where your power begins. Because once you realize it's not about beating the system, but understanding your place within it, you stop reacting and you start seeing. You stop asking, why does this keep happening to me? And start asking, where am I in the digestive process? Are you the fresh input, the juicy prey, the stop to be hunted, or are you something else? Here's the secret. The machine isn't invincible. It just thrives on predictability. It wants you to enter exactly when you're supposed to, exit exactly where it expects you to. It doesn't need to manipulate you. It just needs you to keep playing by the book. So what if you burned the book? What if you broke rhythm, placed stops in strange places, entered not on signals but on system flow? What if you traded like someone who knows they're inside a machine? The moment you stop thinking like a retail trader, the moment you start thinking like an architect of behavior, that's when digestion slows. That's when survival begins. No, this isn't about being clever. This is about being structural. Because some traders don't get digested. They become part of the machine. Silent, smooth, integral. Too essential to be consumed. They trade less, they wait more, they observe flow, they move not to chase price, but to exploit behavior. And when they enter, it's not for action, it's for impact. You can become that trader, but first you must accept this. You are inside the system. It has no feelings, only rules. If you don't know those rules, you are food. But if you learn them, you are function. Let's drop the metaphors for a second. Let's speak in raw biological terms. If the market is a living machine, then liquidity is its bloodstream. And the blood it pumps, the blood that nourishes every move, every candle, every wick, is yours. Your capital, your trade, your order, your urgency. Every time you place a trade, you donate. Every time you set a limit order, you expose your intention. Every time you show up with a plan, the machine already smells you coming. Liquidity doesn't just happen, it's drawn out, extracted, and the market is an expert vampire. You thought placing a limit order showed patience. You thought it gave you control. But to the machine, it's a map, a clear signal of where you're willing to transact, where you think safety lives. But safety is the first thing the system weaponizes against you. Because the machine doesn't want scattered individuals, it wants clusters, masses of orders stacked at the same level, traders aligned in thought, herds moving toward the same resistance, the same support, the same breakout. Why? Because clusters mean blood pools. The larger the pool, the more rewarding the sweep. Ever wonder why price always seems to stop you out by just a few pips? Why it wicked your entry only to instantly reverse? It's not targeting you. It's targeting your type, your behavior profile, your predictability. You placed your stop 5 pips below support because a course told you to, because you believed in textbook risk to reward, because it made sense. But to the machine, it's a feeding zone. It smells the stops, it sees the crowd, it hunts, and you bleed. Let me tell you about a trader I once knew. He was precise. Clean entries, beautiful zones, tight risk control. He lost 80% of his trades. Why? Because he was predictable. Every support, he put his stop 5 pips beneath, without fail, every time. And every time, the market wicked 5.1 pips stopped him out and reversed. He thought he was unlucky, but he was consistent in exactly the wrong way. Then he did something strange. He randomized. Some stops 3 pips deep, some 7. Sometimes he'd split his position, decoy stop, and real stop. His win rate didn't just rise, his longevity tripled because he broke the pattern. He stopped leaking blood on schedule. He started controlling the flow. You don't beat the machine by being smart. You beat it by being undefined. When you act like everyone else, you become part of the blood pool. When you step outside the rhythm, you start to watch the feast instead of being part of it. Ask yourself, when you place a stop, who benefits from that placement? When you enter a breakout, whose liquidity are you feeding? Who needs your order to fill their strategy? The market isn't reacting to your technicals. It's reacting to behavioral liquidity. That's where the machine feeds. Round numbers, key levels, psychological thresholds. The market knows you love them, and it lays its traps right there. So how do you fight back? Not with aggression, not with complexity, but with structure awareness. Before every trade, ask, what does the machine want here? Where would everyone else put their orders? What would be the most efficient path to extract blood? And then you move differently. Stop placing stops where you should. Start placing them where they shouldn't be found. Behind zones no one touches. In gaps that feel wrong, but work. Be invisible. Be illogical in a logical way. You are the donor, but donors who understand the blood bank rules, they choose how and when to give. Sometimes you trade to extract, sometimes you trade to provide, but always with intent, because the machine isn't just fast, it's precise, and it's not randomness that bleeds you, it's predictability. Break the rhythm, bend the flow, camouflage your intention, don't react to price, read the hunger. Anticipate the need, flow with it, and bleed only when it profits you. This is how you stop being the donor and start becoming the director of flow. You've been told your stop loss is your safety net, your fallback, your protection against catastrophe. But what if I told you your stop loss is also a lighthouse for predators? What if it's not a shield, but a siren? See, in the machine's eyes, your stop isn't a secret. It's data, predictable, trackable, exploitable. When you place a stop just below support or just above resistance like every other trader does, you're not protecting yourself. You're raising a flag. You're saying, here I am, come eat me. And the system does. But it doesn't do it out of malice. It's just following its programming. It hunts clusters. Because when thousands of traders place stops at the same spot, that zone becomes a liquidity magnet, a feast, a spike in the flow map, a hot zone for sweepers, market makers, and algos. They don't care about your trade. They care about the volume underneath your hope. So what happens? You do everything by the book. Your entry is solid, your stop is well positioned, calculated, then price trickles down, kisses your stop, slices through, and reverses perfectly. You don't just lose, you feel betrayed. You say, hey, it's like the market knew, and you're right, it did. Because stop hunting isn't paranoia, it's protocol. Liquidity providers and HFTs scan markets for dense stop zones. They don't need to guess, they have models. They know where the average trader hides. They exploit that predictability with surgical precision. So what's the solution? Trade without stops? No. You still need boundaries, but boundaries must be invisible, intelligent, disguised, strategic. The traders who survive, who thrive, don't eliminate stops. They transform them. They place decoys, small stops in expected places. They hide their real risk behind unscanned terrain. They don't think, where do I protect myself? They think, where does the machine expect me? And they go the opposite way. Because the truth is brutal. If your stop is obvious, your trade is already dying. Think about this. If you're using the same logic, same levels, same entries as everyone else, then you're playing a game of survival in a crowd that's being targeted. The system doesn't need you specifically. It needs you as a pattern. And as long as you keep showing up the same way, you'll keep getting digested. So here's your shift. Your stop loss isn't just a price level. It's a statement of behavior. And the system reads behavior like an open book. You want to be unreadable, untraceable, invisible. Try placing stops in illogical places, but that still makes sense to you. Test the untested zones. Experiment with randomness. Hide behind liquidity voids. Use the market's assumptions against it. Every time you place a stop, ask, is this placement protecting me or exposing me? Because when you start thinking this way, your stop loss changes from a vulnerability into armor. Armor that doesn't just block the system, it confuses it. Armor that doesn't signal desperation, but strategic adaptation. The machine scans for weakness, but it can't process what it can't predict. It can't hunt what it can't find. So stop giving it a trail. Start giving it questions, because ultimately the stop loss isn't the problem. Your thinking is. You thought your stop was about math, but it's about visibility. You thought it was about control, but it's about camouflage. Place it not where it should be, but where it can't be weaponized. That's how you survive. That's how you win. Stop thinking like prey. Start thinking like a structural anomaly. Start thinking like the trader the machine can't digest. You think you're trading price, you stare at the candles, the bullish engulfing, the break of structure, the retest, the textbook setup. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Price is not what you're trading. Price is just the skin, the surface flicker. Beneath it, a nervous system, a web of intentions, reactions, and manipulations, signals pulsing from the deeper layers of the market machine. And most traders, they don't trade with this awareness. They react like muscles without a brain, twitching at every movement. They see price spike and assume strength. They see a drop and assume fear. But what they're reacting to is just residue, an echo. By the time you see price move, the intention, the real motive is already spent. You're not trading the cause, you're trading the consequence. That's why you always feel late, why you're stopped out, why it moves just after you exit. Because you're reading what happened, not what's happening. But what if you could change that? What if you stopped reading price and started reading pressure? Let's go deeper. When price consolidates in a tight range, wicks on both sides, volume low, you think no trade zone, indecision. But what if that isn't indecision? What if that's calculation? The machine is not confused. It's testing elasticity. It's feeling around the nerves, probing the boundaries, and every reaction you give, it stores it, learns from it, prepares for the sweep. Now imagine this, a sudden jab down, a hard wick. It bounces right back. You hesitate, but a trader trained in structure doesn't just see a wick. He sees intention. That wasn't selling pressure. That was a behavioral probe. The machine tapping your stop clusters, testing conviction, measuring how far it can stretch the rubber band before it snaps back. You must stop interpreting the market like a tourist reading street signs. Start seeing it like a doctor reads symptoms. Because price is a symptom, not the disease, not the cause, not the strategy. It's what's left behind when intention finishes moving. So you must ask, what's the underlying pressure causing this flicker? Is it real liquidity or manufactured? Start watching how price reacts, not just how it moves. Watch how volume expands and contracts in relation to movement. Feel the rhythm, learn the spasms. Because once you can read the nervous system, you stop chasing price and you start predicting behavior. That's how the best traders operate. I remember watching one enter long on Bitcoin right in the middle of what looked like a breakdown. Candles looked heavy, everyone was shorting, but he said, that's not selling, that's manufacturing. And he was right. The machine was pushing price down aggressively, not to sell, but to shake liquidity, to spook entries, to bait late shorts before the engine ignited upward. He didn't trade the chart. He traded the pressure signature behind the chart. And this is your next evolution. You can't rely on patterns in volatile markets. Patterns are static, market dynamic. And intention is the pulse underneath everything. It changes, it adapts, it misleads, but it also leaves footprints, clues, because desperation smells different than confidence. Fakeouts feel different than real breaks. The system leaves subtle signals if you're trained to feel them. So ask yourself, how often do your breakouts instantly fail? How often do confirmation candles bait you in only to reverse? That's not bad luck. That's surface tension. You read the skin, but miss the muscle. And now you're learning anatomy. From this point forward, you stop looking for price action. You look for intention expression. You watch how the market flinches under pressure. You track how volume dilates under manipulation. And your entries, they'll feel strange. Not logical, not technical, but right, viscerally right. Because you're no longer trading patterns. You're intercepting intention. And when you master this, you stop reacting, you start leading, you enter before the herd, exit before the fade. You move with the nervous system, not against it. And that's how you evolve from candle chaser into a signal interceptor. You've been told trading is a level playing field, that the markets are neutral, fair, that with enough discipline, strategy, and patience, anyone can succeed. But that's a lie, and not because someone is cheating, because the game itself was never designed to be fair. It was built, genetically engineered to be asymmetrical, not broken, not corrupt, but inherently unbalanced. And that imbalance, that's where the machine gets its efficiency. See, nature doesn't prioritize fairness. It prioritizes survival. And the market is no different. It's not here to make sure everyone has a chance. It's here to survive by design. And in that design, some are meant to feed and others are meant to be fed upon. You feel that unfairness, don't you? That sense that something isn't quite right. You enter with precision and get slipped. You react to news, but the move is already gone. You place a perfect order and still get eaten. You're not crazy, you're just operating on the wrong layer. Let's break it down. Institutions co-locate their servers inside exchanges. Their orders get processed in microseconds. Yours take 300 milliseconds. Think about that. They're done reacting before you've even seen the move. They front-run sentiment, front-run structure, front-run you. But speed is just one layer of the asymmetry. They also have data you don't. Order flow, dark pool prints, custom feed latency, access to footprints that you don't even know exist. And then there's incentives. They don't get paid for being right. They get paid for providing liquidity, for adding volume, for enabling the digestion process. While you scramble for entries, they set toll booths, you pay the toll, they collect, and yet, despite all this, you're still alive. Which means you can use the asymmetry against itself, because while their advantage is speed, access, and structure, it's also their limitation. Speed means rigidity, size means visibility, power means predictability. They need to move a certain way, they need the market to react a certain way, which means their strength becomes their pattern. And patterns can be read, traced, turned. David didn't beat Goliath with brute force. He beat him by changing the game. So how do you change the game? First, you stop expecting fairness. You stop chasing perfect setups. You stop thinking in terms of equality. You embrace the truth. The market is a hierarchical ecosystem. You are not the apex predator. But you also don't have to be prey. You can become invisible, untraceable, a shadow that moves between the cracks. Let them play the speed game. Let them chase size. You play a different game. You look for overextension. You look for behavioral bloat. You watch when the machine overreaches and you step in. Because even extraction engines have blind spots. Even algorithms overshoot. You wait, not passively, but structurally. You read the flow. You read the hunger. You feel the rhythm. And when they open the gate, not because you chased it, but because they need your liquidity, that's when you strike. You don't need to be first. You need to be least visible. That's your edge. The asymmetry isn't a wall, it's a map, a blueprint. It shows you where the machine expects movement and where you can move undetected. Because what they gain in speed, they lose in adaptability. And what you lack in influence, you make up for in agility. So stop asking, how do I beat the big players? Start asking, how can I move in their blind spots? How can I hide beneath their assumptions? The more predictable you seem, the more edible you become. But when you become structurally strange, when your actions don't line up with the standard blueprint, you confuse the system. And the machine hates confusion. That's where your survival begins, not in beating the system, but in dancing between its teeth. That's asymmetry. It's not injustice, it's opportunity. Because when you finally see that the market isn't a test of fairness, but a biological system with inputs and outputs, you stop being frustrated by the imbalance. You start seeing how to leverage it. And the moment you do, you stop playing someone else's game and start designing your own. You've felt the bite, you've seen the wicks, you've been shaken, swept, consumed. Now it's time to meet the place where digestion happens, the exchange. You think it's neutral, just a matching engine, a facilitator, but it's not. It's a stomach, and your trades are the food. Let that sink in. You think of exchanges as infrastructure, as middlemen, but they are not passive. They are hungry. Exchanges aren't built to help you, they're built to process you. Your trades, your timing, if as your speed, all become part of the digestion protocol. Every time you hit market buy, the exchange doesn't simply pair you with a seller. It routes you, splits your order, delays it by microseconds, fills you across venues. Why? Because your trade isn't just a transaction. It's an opportunity packet, a chance for the exchange to extract margin, to monetize urgency, to feed its real clients, the liquidity providers, the market makers, the high frequency predators co-located in its veins. Yes, co-located. Their servers live inside the exchange. They don't trade faster, they exist closer. You place an order, they see it before it's processed, they act before you blink. This isn't conspiracy, it's design. Because exchanges don't make money from wins or losses, they make money from volume, from activity, from digestion. And who creates the most activity? Not the winners, the losers, the ones who overtrade, who revenge trade, who click, react, chase. They don't extract profit, they generate engagement. Exchanges reward them, tight spreads, high leverage, user-friendly interfaces. But all of that is bait to feed the stomach. The system doesn't want smart traders, it wants active ones. That's the unspoken rule. So the question becomes, if you must feed the exchange, how do you control what you feed it? How do you avoid becoming the easy meal? Simple. Starve it. Not entirely, but intentionally. You stop being a compulsive participant. You stop handing over volume like a desperate donor. You trade less, but with structure. You enter when it matters. You sit out when it doesn't. You choose your digestion. You switch from market orders, loud, urgent, exposed, to limit orders, silent, calculated, sometimes even profitable. Because here's a secret. Many exchanges pay market makers. They pay traders who add liquidity, who sit still, who wait. You rush to hit the bid, they get paid to be there. You think fast action wins, but patience gets the paycheck. So ask yourself, why am I in such a hurry? Who profits from my speed? The answer? Everyone but you. But this isn't about quitting, it's about understanding your function. The stomach digests what you give it, so give it what confuses it, give it what doesn't spike its sensors. Become bland, silent, slippery. Let the exchange process someone else, not you. Because here's the twist, the exchange needs you. Without retail flow, it doesn't run. Without your orders, your volume, your noise, the machine starves. That's your leverage. When you stop being predictable, when you stop feeding it junk at every candle twitch, you regain control. You become unappetizing, unrewarding, unresponsive, unprofitable to the machine. And that's how you survive. That's how you shift roles, from food to bone, from reaction to resistance. You're not here to be devoured. You're here to integrate. Because when you learn how digestion works, you can feed when you want, hold when you must, and move when no one is watching. The stomach can't digest what it can't taste. So stop being flavorful. Start being structural. If the exchange is the stomach, then the market makers are its immune system. But they're not here to protect you. They're here to protect the system. You think of market makers as villains, predators, manipulators, the enemy, but they're not. They're not trying to beat you. They're trying to balance you. Because their job isn't to win trades. It's to keep the machine alive. And to keep the machine alive, they must maintain flow. Smooth it, guide it, regulate it. When imbalance threatens the structure, too many buyers, too many sellers, too much emotion, they step, not because they're right, but because they're necessary. That's the key. Market makers aren't trading ideas. They're not analyzing charts. They're responding to pressure. They don't care about your trend line. They care about flow stability. When they sense imbalance, they hedge, offset, absorb, reverse. Not because they think you're wrong, but because they know too many of you are doing the same thing. Imagine an immune system. It doesn't evaluate morality. It sees excess, abnormality, invasion, and it reacts. Market makers do the same. You pile into a long breakout, they short, not to hurt you, but to rebalance flow. Because too many of you doing the same thing means volatility. Volatility threatens the machine, so they bring it back to neutral. And if you're predictable, they wipe you out on principle. They aren't malicious, they're structural. But here's the opportunity. Immune systems don't destroy everything. They protect what aligns with the host. So what if you stopped fighting them? What if you became useful to the system? You don't have to defeat market makers. You just have to stop triggering them. Don't be a virus, be a vitamin. Learn their behavior. They front run sentiment. They trap overextension. They fade aggression. They love crowds. So stop being one. Start asking, what would the immune system do here? Where would it absorb risk? What pressure is it trying to stabilize? Because when you learn that, you start dancing with it. You move when it moves. You fade when it fades. You provide calm during chaos. And sometimes that means taking the opposite trade. Sometimes it means stepping away entirely. Sometimes it means being invisible. Here's a story. A fund trader once told me, don't predict markets. We count cards. They don't bet on direction. They bet on probabilities of imbalance. When retail piles into red, they start buying black. Not because they believe, but because they see desperation. You can do the same. You can feel when the crowd is too loud, when the breakout is too obvious, when the enthusiasm is too universal. That's when the immune system activates. And if you're in the herd, you're part of the problem, and you'll be cleared out. But if you see it coming, if you wait, if you stay still while others scream, you become symbiotic, useful, necessary, unbothered. And when you do act, it's not to chase, it's to balance, to absorb pressure, not add to it. You're not the virus, you're the stabilizer. You stop demanding that the system serve you, and you start serving the system on your terms. And here's the twist. When you serve the system strategically, it starts serving you back. You get better fills, cleaner moves, less slippage, more time. Because you're not triggering defenses, you're flowing with them. This is the power of becoming aligned, of befriending the immune system, of understanding that resistance isn't personal, it's procedural. The machine doesn't hate you, it just hates imbalance. So stop being a spike, start being a bridge. Because in this ecosystem, you're either noise or your signal. You're either a problem or a solution. Make the immune system your ally. It doesn't need to beat you. It just needs to not react to you. So be subtle, be essential, be part of the balance, and the machine will stop fighting you because it will need you to survive. You've studied the charts, planned the setup, marked the zones. Now comes the moment, execution. But this is where digestion begins, because how you enter the market isn't just a technical decision, it's a biological one. In the machine, your execution is the enzyme, the catalyst, the identifier, the molecule that tells the system what kind of substance just entered. And make no mistake, the system scans you the moment you act. Did you place a market order? It reads urgent, eager, vulnerable. Did you set a limit order? It reads calculated, passive, visible. But here's the trick. Every action you take sends a signature, a pattern, a fingerprint. And if your fingerprint matches millions of others, you're instantly categorized, not as a threat, as fuel. Because most traders enter in predictable ways. They click buy at resistance breaks, sell after retests, use fixed stop to target ratios. They think they're being strategic, but they're just being digestible. And the machine, it loves digestible. It anticipates your order type, your timing, your size, your sequence. It routes you, slices your order, delays it, front runs it. You think you're being fast, but speed without structure is just noise. Let's look deeper. Market orders, the most common enzyme. They scream desperation, they shout urgency, they show your full hand. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes urgency has strength, momentum, precision. But most of the time, it's just nutrient-rich input, easy to consume. Then we have limit orders, cleaner, safer, right? Not always. They're visible, they show intention, they build liquidity. And if you're predictable, your limit orders become targets. The system sees them as invitations. Price floats toward your limit, fills, then snaps the other way. Why? Because you weren't hiding, you were leaving crumbs. Breadcrumbs the system follows to your wallet. Then there's the iceberg order, part visible, part hidden. A clever trick until algos detect the fragmentation pattern, and once they do, they reconstruct your entire size, because even invisibility, if repeated, becomes a blueprint. The only solution? Become systematically unsystematic. Break the rhythm. Change your flavor. Split your orders differently every time. Use Fibonacci. Use randomness. Use intuition. Don't just hide your size. Hide your nature. Try this. Create your own execution game. Flip 3 coins before your next trade. Heads, heads, heads. Market order, full size. Tails, tails, tails. Limit order, 10% size. Anything else? Create your own rule. Why? Because the market can't digest what it can't predict. This isn't chaos, it's adaptive behavior. Think of yourself as the enzyme the machine can't categorize. Sometimes you provide liquidity, sometimes you take it, sometimes you move fast, sometimes you sit still. You're not just reacting to price, you're creating friction in the digestion process. And friction buys you time. It buys you opportunity. It makes you unappetizing. Because in a system built on probability, the highest edge belongs to the trader who refuses to be placed in a box. And this isn't about being tricky, it's about being unreadable. Execution is not a button click, it's your language, your dialect, your DNA. Every time you enter, you're broadcasting who you are. So the question is, what are you telling the machine? Are you screaming retail, eager, obvious? Or are you whispering essential, adaptive, unknown? Because the traders who survive don't have a favorite order type. They don't swear by market or limit. They don't cling to structure. They are structure. They don't enter for the sake of being in. They enter when their execution adds value to the machine, not when the machine extracts value from them. They build their own enzyme profile and they change it over time because the market is a living organism and living organisms adapt. So you must too. The next time you're about to enter, pause. Ask, am I feeding the system or am I filtering into it unnoticed? That pause, that awareness is your edge. Execution is digestion. So become the food that can't be broken down, the enzyme that blends, the enzyme that builds. Your move is your message. Send it wisely. You've seen their footprints, but never their faces. They don't leave names. They don't brag on Twitter. They don't live stream their trades because they move like viruses. And the market, this giant self-healing multi-layered organism, can't detect them. Not in time. They slip in, replicate silently, hijack the host, and vanish. But here's the twist. They don't fight the system. They live within it. These are stealth traders, the untrackable, the invisible, the profitable. You've seen the signs, a sudden move in both directions, sharp wick up, sharp wick down, but the candle closes flat. Price floats toward a key level, and just before it gets there, all liquidity disappears. A breakout forms, barely breaks, then price explodes. No news, no pattern, just raw, explosive movement. What happened? They were here, and they were done before you even noticed. They don't wait for confirmation. They create the confirmation that others are waiting for, then exit. And you enter just as they vanish because you were looking for signs. They were looking for windows. They don't play the game like retail. They don't care about MACD crossovers or symmetrical triangles. They care about one thing, conditions. They study when the machine is ready to move, not just technically, but structurally. They look at flow, pressure, depth, exhaustion. They don't say, this looks bullish. They ask, can this condition be exploited now? They see where liquidity is vulnerable, they identify where volume is lacking, and they strike with precision, not size. Timing, because size exposes. Timing slips through. Here's how they do it. They break large orders into small fragments. 1,000 lots become 10 lots, scattered, hidden, executed across multiple venues over minutes or hours, sometimes days. While you're waiting for the big move, they're the ones building the fuel for it. They don't buy breakouts, they build the pressure that causes them. And when it fires, they're already out. You enter late, thinking it's the beginning. But for them, it was the end of a campaign. They don't trade moments, they execute campaigns. Strategic, silent, surgical. And here's what makes them deadly. They understand that visibility is vulnerability, that attention is digestion. So they never trigger immune responses. They move in shadows, they think in shadows, they act in layers. And the most terrifying part, you never see the trade. You only feel the shockwave. But you can learn from them. You don't need to mimic their size. You need to mimic their mentality. They don't ask, is this a good trade? They ask, can this footprint be seen? They don't say, I need confirmation. They say, confirmation is already priced. They don't enter because of setups. They enter because of setup creation. And they leave before the herd even knows the gate opened. To start thinking like them, ask, who's building the structure behind this candle? What movement would force the most digestion right now? Where would a stealth trader unload without a trace? This isn't mysticism, it's engineering. Because in every market, there's visible space and negative space. Zones where volume didn't appear, where price avoided, where moves were triggered but not sustained. That's where the viruses lived. That's where they fed. That's where they hid. And now, that's where you look. You stop chasing movement. You start watching absence. You track not what happened, but what almost happened and didn't. That's where the language of stealth lives. That's how viruses think. They don't look for doors. They create entry points no one else sees. So what does this mean for you? It means you trade less, you wait more, you fragment your exposure, you obscure your intention. You don't become them, but you think like them because viruses can't be digested. They can only be understood. And understanding them is how you build immunity. So the next time you see price explode with no warning, don't panic. Take notes. The virus passed and left behind a map. You spot the setup, perfect structure, clean levels, ideal confirmation. You enter with confidence. Then it hits you instantly. The market turns. You're underwater before you can even adjust your stop. And in your gut, you don't just feel pain, you feel something worse. It's happened before, too many times. But this time, you're not confused. You're not emotional. You're starting to understand. This wasn't a bad trade. It was adverse selection. Let's break that down. In medicine, an autoimmune response is when the body attacks itself. It misidentifies its own cells as threats. It launches defense where none is needed. It becomes its own worst enemy. In trading, adverse selection is the same phenomenon. You followed the rules, your entry was sound, your timing was aligned, but the system, it attacked you anyway. Why? Because someone else knew more. Because your logic was visible. Because your position was already priced into the move and positioned against. You were a well-intentioned molecule, targeted by the immune system of the machine, not for what you did wrong, but for how predictably right you were. You were outgunned, out-informed, out-positioned. And this is where most traders spiral. They lose trust, they seek new indicators, new strategies, new mentors. But none of that will work if you don't address this. You were selected because you were obvious, not because you're weak, because you're known. Let's go deeper. In modern markets, there are players who see everything. Level 2 order flow, iceberg detection, dark pool activity, latency shifts. They know your size, they know your timing. They even know your confidence level based on how and when you entered. And if your action signals urgency, they step ahead of you. If your order shows vulnerability, they widen the spread. If your structure is clean and by the book, they turn it into a trap. You didn't make a mistake. You just made a move they already planned for. That's adverse selection. And it doesn't feel like being tricked. It feels like being punished for doing it right. So how do you fight this? You don't fight it, you study it. Start by recognizing the symptoms. Instant reversals after clean entries. Slippage only on your fills. Market stalling until you enter, then exploding the other way. Feeling front run again and again. These aren't coincidences. They're feedback. Not to stop trading, but to adjust visibility. Because here's the truth. Every trade sends a signal, and the stronger your logic, the stronger your signal. Ironically, your best setups are often your most digestible, because if it's obvious to you, it was obvious to the system first. So the cure isn't better confirmation, it's better camouflage. Next time, don't ask, is this a good trade? Ask, am I announcing myself right now? Hide your size, break your timing, fade your own signals. Decoy your intent. Act in misdirection, not confusion, but precision misalignment. If they expect you to enter at breakout, let them. Then enter at the retest of their failure. If they expect your stop behind structure, show them a small position there. Then hide your real protection somewhere illogical. The more structured your system becomes, the more unstructured your execution must look. You're not trading a market. You're navigating a reaction system, and the system reacts fastest to what it understands best. So stop being understandable. Start being unreadable. Adverse selection doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you were too readable at the wrong time. So next time it happens, don't rage, don't spiral, don't overthink. Pause. Zoom out. Ask, who was waiting for this setup before me? Who needed me to take this trade? What function did my order serve in their campaign? Because once you ask those questions, You stop being the autoimmune target. And sometimes you become the autoimmune response yourself. You stop being selected. You start doing the selecting because information asymmetry is real. But perception asymmetry is more powerful. When you know you're outgunned, you stop walking into ambushes. You let the ambush trigger itself. You watch it fail. Then you step in on your terms. That's how you flip the script. That's how you turn autoimmune chaos into structural clarity. You're no longer a cell in the way, you're part of the design. It sounds so simple. Place a limit order, wait your turn, get filled, like waiting in line at a bakery. But this isn't a bakery. This is war, a molecular battlefield, and you're standing in the middle of it. This is the Q war, a microscopic fight for position, priority, and profit. And your place in line? It's not just a matter of time, it's a matter of life and death for your trade. Let me explain. Every limit order you place joins a queue, but that queue isn't static. It's not polite. It's not fair. It's a constantly shifting structure based on price, time, venue, order type, and speed. And in that structure, milliseconds matter. Position 1, you get filled. Position 4, you get skipped. And sometimes skipped forever because price might never come back. Liquidity might disappear, and your perfect entry becomes an opportunity that evaporates. You think you're near the front, but by the time your order reaches the book, thousands of HFT bots have already beaten you there. They're co-located, nanoseconds faster, hardwired into the exchange's digestive system. You're not late by seconds, you're late by lifetimes in machine time, and that's why your trades often almost work. The price came, the setup formed, but you never got filled. That almost? That's intelligence. That's feedback. That's the machine telling you you chose the wrong layer to engage. Because you're trying to fight where you're already outmatched. So what's the solution? You stop fighting for the front of the line. You stop fighting for lines at all. You start playing a different game. You find when the queue is weak, where the imbalance is wide, where the structure is hollow, and you place your trade where no one else wants to. Think about that. The system rewards predictability temporarily, but it devours it permanently. When you place your order at the obvious zone, you join the herd, you stand in line behind bots, you become part of the crowd. But when you place at the strange level, off structure, out of sync, slightly weird, you often get ghost filled because you're in the place no one else dared to stand. And in that silence, your order becomes valuable because in a marketplace full of takers and noise, stillness is a signal. So next time your trade gets skipped, don't get frustrated. Get curious. Ask, was I in the wrong place or just the wrong queue? Was my order lost or simply not necessary in that structure? Who benefited from me standing where I did? The answer might hurt, but it's also your edge because queues aren't evil. They're just crowded. And the moment you realize you don't have to stand in them, you start designing different engagement zones. You stop trying to be first. You start trying to be invisible and perfectly placed. And when you do that, you remove the friction. You enter during imbalance, not during attention. You provide liquidity when it's scarce, not when it's advertised. And here's the kicker. Sometimes back of line is exactly where you want to be. Let someone else trigger the move. Let someone else absorb the digestion. Let someone else light the fuse. You just ride the wave they set off. You don't need to be fast. You need to be present at the pivot. That's what the Q war teaches you. Not to fight for speed, but to fight for placement. Not to demand fairness, but to design asymmetry around your own terms. Because the market doesn't care about your effort. It cares about your timing. And timing isn't about speed. It's about intelligence. So pick your battles. Not every price level deserves your attention. Not every moment deserves your capital. You are not here to fill orders. You are here to extract outcomes. And that means trading where others avoid, sitting when others chase, filling when the system isn't ready, but close. Because at the end of the day, cues are symptoms, not signals. They tell you where interest is, but your job is to act where opportunity hides. This is the battlefield. But the victory is not in being first. It's in being invisible, unchallenged, and perfectly timed. It starts innocent. You wake up, check the charts, see movement, feel the pulse. You take a trade. It's small, no big deal. Stop gets hit. You shrug. Then you see another setup. This one looks stronger. You enter again. Stop gets hit again. You feel the heat rise behind your eyes. Now you're not trading the market, you're trading your frustration. One more entry. Now it's personal. You double size, you get wicked out again. And just like that, you're in the loop, the noise trader loop, where emotion drives decision, where reaction replaces strategy, where logic becomes justification, and losses become fuel for more losses. You tell yourself you're being active, that you're learning, that you're in the flow. But what you're really in is a behavioral trap. And here's the terrifying part. The market doesn't punish you for it. It feeds on you for it because the machine doesn't hate noise traders. It depends on them. Their overactivity creates volume. Their confusion creates liquidity. Their urgency keeps the stomach full. They are the heartbeat of the system, not the heart, the rhythm. Every time a noise trader reacts to a candle, the machine gets smarter. Every time they FOMO into a breakout, the system expands. Every time they revenge trade, they donate capital and energy, and the system smiles. Silently, effortlessly, because the noise loop isn't a glitch, it's a feature, a self-sustaining circuit of self-destruction. So how do you escape it? By seeing it, by naming it, by understanding that it's not just a string of bad trades. It's an identity crisis because the noise trader doesn't think they're a noise trader. They think they're improving. They think they're working harder than everyone else, more active, more engaged. But they confuse activity with progress. They confuse motion with mastery. They don't realize that trading isn't about doing more. It's about doing less with intention. That the best traders in the world sit in silence for 90% of the time, not watching, waiting for structure, for alignment, for purposeful opportunity. Noise traders, by contrast, wake up needing to trade. They need movement, need action. They mistake the charts for stimulation. But the market isn't here to entertain you. It's here to extract from you. So if you're seeking stimulation, you're already being processed. The loop feels productive, feels alive. But in truth, you're burning capital, burning energy, burning identity. So ask yourself, do I trade because I see something or because I feel something? Do I place trades I'd explain to someone else or ones I hope no one sees? Do I measure growth by entries or by restraint? Because escape doesn't come from better entries. It comes from recognizing the loop. You don't break the loop with a bigger trade. You break it with a pause. You stop mid-click. You ask, am I trading or just reacting? You walk away, not forever, just long enough to hear silence again, to stop feeding the machine every time it twitches, to stop being the entertainment, to become the architect. That's your test. That's your graduation. Not from beginner to expert, but from noise to structure, from prey to participant. You don't escape by force, you escape by transformation. You stop thinking like a trader. You start thinking like an organ in the system. Essential, deliberate, indigestible, because the noise trader loop isn't about strategy, it's about identity addiction. But you're ready now. You've seen the structure, you've seen the stomach, you've felt the immune response, you've studied the viruses. Now you face yourself. And on the other side of this loop is everything you've been trying to become. You've spent months, maybe years, searching, reading, testing, falling, getting back up. You've cycled through indicators, strategies, mentors, courses, each one promising the edge, the secret, the key that unlocks the game. But no matter what you try, no matter how many adjustments you make, the system still feels one step ahead, like it knows you, like it's already seen your best moves before you make them. And you're right, because it has. And now it's time for the truth. The system is closed. Let that sit for a moment. The system you're trying to conquer, it isn't open-ended. It's not waiting to be unlocked with effort or genius. It's already complete. Every edge you're chasing, already priced in, absorbed, weaponized. Every technique you think is new, already studied, anticipated, used as bait. The system is not a puzzle. It's a digestive loop, self-reinforcing, self-optimizing, self-correcting. You're not discovering hidden doors. You're walking the same maze they want you in, and they've built it so that every path feels close to breakthrough, but always ends up circular. That's not incompetence, that's design. Because the more you search for freedom within the system, the deeper you get trapped by it. So the only way out, you stop playing the game. You step above it. You shift from the question, how do I win, to something much more powerful, how does the system win? And once you ask that, the maze fades, the map appears. You begin to see structure in randomness. You see digestion where you used to see volatility. You see behavioral liquidity where you used to see noise. You stop asking, why did price reverse there? You start asking, who benefited from that reversal? You stop reacting to price. You start reading intention because price is just movement. But structure is motive. So now, every time you prepare to trade, ask yourself, where am I in the loop? Am I part of the digestion process or am I directing it? Is this entry a signal or am I the signal? What function does my action serve in the system? And slowly you'll notice something change. You won't trade more, you'll trade less. But when you do, it'll feel precise, powerful, like you're placing a cog into the machine, not throwing another wrench into chaos, because you've stopped thinking like a retail trader. You've stopped thinking like a predator or prey. You've started thinking like a structural component, not an outsider trying to beat the game, but an insider who understands the blueprint. You're no longer asking for opportunity, you're creating it. And in that shift, everything transforms. What once looked like randomness becomes rhythm. What once felt adversarial becomes ecological. The market stops feeling like an enemy. It becomes a system you can dance with. Because you're not chasing trades, you're observing the system's need for function, and you become that function. You move with awareness, you position with purpose. You step when the system wants you to, not when your emotions scream for action. And suddenly trades don't feel exciting, they feel inevitable. Execution becomes a whisper, not a scream. Stops become armor, not weakness. Losses become data, not trauma, because you're not chasing outcomes anymore. You're chasing alignment. This is what it means to step outside the loop, not to defeat the system, but to see how it processes everything and step around its jaws. And when you see that blueprint, you can't unsee it. You stop looking for magic. You start looking for mechanics. Because mastery isn't about adding more tools. It's about seeing the structure beneath the tools. And once you see that structure, you never trade the same way again. You become something else. Not a participant, not a victim, but part of the code. Welcome to the other side. You've seen the machine. You've walked through the digestive cycles. You've felt the traps, the cues, the false signals. You've stopped reacting. You've started seeing. Now comes the final transformation, not just tactical, but biological. You stop trying to outsmart the system and you become part of it. Not food, not fuel, but form. Because every market participant plays a role. Some are consumed. Noise traders, retail herd, impulse actors. They scream, they chase, they bleed. Others pass through unnoticed. Ghosts, viruses, invisible engineers. They inject, extract, and vanish. But then there are a rare few who remain. They don't get digested. They don't get hunted. They don't disappear. They persist because they've become essential. Structural cells, like bones in a body, like steel in a skyscraper. They don't fight flow. They anchor it. They aren't noticed by volatility. They stabilize it. They aren't disrupted by emotion. They absorb it. So what makes them different? It's not intelligence, not speed, not capital. It's identity. They've stopped trying to conquer the machine. They've learned to synchronize with it. They've stopped playing to win and started playing to serve. Because structural cells don't chase. They wait, measure, observe, test. They don't enter because of emotion. They enter because imbalance requires them. They ride the imbalance professionally, not wildly, not desperately. They don't flinch at loss. They don't panic at reversal. Because to a structural trader, losses aren't betrayal. They're friction in the system, cost of operation, part of function. They don't think in terms of wrong. They think in terms of feedback. They don't guess direction. They understand pressure points. So ask yourself, are you chasing signals or becoming signal stability? Are you fearing the market or being useful to it? Are you a reaction to price or a form that price respects? Because when you become a structural cell, you become indigestible. You don't trade setups, you trade structure. You don't forecast moves, you respond to systemic needs. When others panic, you absorb. When others rush in, you observe. When others overcommit, you quietly place precision. You stop needing to be right, you start needing to be aligned. And the system begins to recognize you, not as threat, not as food, but as a stabilizer. And here's the secret. The system rewards structure. It rewards patience, precision, presence. You get better fills, cleaner exits, more consistent behavior, because the machine starts using you as part of its balance, and you become the cell it can't function without. The calm in the storm, the counterweight in volatility, the silent node that doesn't scream for attention but commands respect through discipline. You become harder to detect, harder to shake, harder to remove, and in a market built to devour, that is power. Not just technical power, psychological immunity. You no longer chase price, you sense what price needs. You no longer get trapped by flow. You become part of its direction. You no longer fear digestion. You are now the framework it digests around. This is not trading. This is trader evolution. And evolution isn't a new strategy, it's a new self. So here, at the end of the blueprint, you face your final choice. Do you return to noise? Do you return to flashing candles, predictable stops, and emotional responses? Or do you step forward into the architecture, into a role the machine needs but can't consume, a structural cell, a stabilizer, a provider of order? The market doesn't punish weakness, it punishes predictability. But structure is sacred. It is kept, protected, utilized. So become it. Let the noise scream. Let the system churn. Let the signals bait. You are no longer food. You are no longer prey. You are part of the machine now, not as a victim, not even as a predator, but as something far rarer, essential, indispensable, structural. Welcome to the other side. So here you are, at the end of the blueprint. But in truth, this isn't the end. It's the crossroads. You've seen the machine for what it is, not a mystery, not a game, but a living, breathing system of digestion, function, and design. You've been shown the traps, the illusions, the reflexes that mislead, the structure that liberates. The question is no longer, can you survive the market? The question is, will you evolve? Because the system won't slow down. The market won't get easier, but you can become clearer, sharper, less edible. Every click, every trade, every reaction is a choice. Not to be processed, or to become part of the process. So next time you place an order, don't just ask, where is the price going? Ask, what does the machine expect me to do? Where am I in the loop? What would a structural cell do right now? Because once you stop trying to beat the market and start serving the system while protecting yourself, you're no longer prey. You're no longer noise. You're function, you're structure. And when that happens, you stop being hunted. You start being respected. This was never about outsmarting others. It was about outgrowing your old self. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be unpredictable, useful, precise, essential. That's how you win. Not with rage, not with revenge trades, not with hope, but with evolution. This isn't a strategy. This is a new identity. So if something in this video made you stop and breathe, if it made you feel seen in your struggles and clear in your next step, then take that clarity with you. Trade less, observe more, think structurally. And if you see the machine now, then welcome to the other side. You're no longer on the menu. You're part of the kitchen.